Good evening and welcome to the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen Artisan Lecture Series. My name is Victoria Dangle and I'm the Executive Director of the General Society. The program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs with the City Council, as well as the generous support of the Friends of the Artisan Lecture Series. For those of you not familiar with the Society, we were founded in 1785 by the skilled craftsmen of New York City. Artisans who represented 22 different trades, including carpenters, saddlers, tailors, silversmiths, among others. Today, this 231-year-old organization continues to serve the people of the City of New York through its educational and cultural programs, including our tuition-free Mechanics Institute, the General Society Library, and our nearly 2-century-old lecture series, of which the Artisan series is a part. The space you are in tonight is the library of the General Society. Founded in 1820, it is the second oldest library in New York City and one of the city's 3 remaining membership circulating libraries. For those of you interested in membership, we do have information on the back table, and we also invite you to not end your visit here this evening in the library, but up in the Mossman Law Collection, where you'll find 350 locks and keys that chronicle late 19th and early 20th century bank vault technology. And if that really piques your interest when you see it, there is a book that's available called The Lore of the Lock, published in 1920. So tonight, we gather once more to pay tribute to the art of craftsmanship. The Artisan Lecture Series has committed itself to giving voice to internationally known artisans who will talk about the intricacies of their specialized crafts. The mission of the Artisan Lecture Series is to promote the work and art of skilled craftsmen to assist in ensuring that their unique knowledge is understood and carried forth for future generations. I would like to now introduce you to Karen Taylor, our program director, who will introduce our master artisan for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Tonight, Christopher Spitzmiller, designer, potter, and lamp maker, will discuss his career path, designing and producing handmade ceramic table lamps. He will also provide an overview of his process from the initial design to connecting with clients. Christopher's ceramic, lamp designs draw inspiration from classical forms and traditional gem-like glazes. Today, his jewel-colored lamps are an established industry favorite among internationally acclaimed interior designers and illuminate the current Oval Office as well as 2 past White House administrations, as well as the homes and workspaces of numerous celebrities and well-appointed residents worldwide. Christopher showed interest in crafts at an early age and went on to study ceramics at the Rhode Island School of Design and Central St. Martin's in London. He began his career in Washington, D.C., and quickly gained critical acclaim as a ceramist. Designers such as Albert Hadley took a liking to his signature lamps and began to commission his work. In 1996, he moved to New York City, where he now creates his one-of-a-kind handmade lamps with a team of skilled artisans out of his Manhattan studio. In the fall of 2014, Christopher opened his first showroom in Midtown Manhattan's D&D building to cater to his ever-growing following and showcase his lamps alongside his new offerings, including marble-glazed tableware, furniture, and other ceramic curiosities. It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you Christopher Spitzmiller.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming out. A little technical thing going on here that I'm not equipped to handle, so we have... Perfect. So I'm from Buffalo, New York, from this little town outside of there called East Aurora, where there's a lot of emphasis on handmade things. what's his name? I'm losing it right now. Craftsmen were from there. There were a lot of handmade things. I took ceramics at a school in Buffalo. My mom had me driven in, and I would take little things and make little pinch pots, and my cousin would glaze them. And then all along the way throughout school, wherever it was possible, I would take ceramics. In my high school, then at my boarding school, I got really involved in it and would delve into it further. And my school that I went to, St. Lawrence University, had a pretty good program where I learned more about it, but they really didn't know how to deal with me, so they let me do whatever I was going to do and put me in a corner and just gave me a 4.0, which was nice, but I didn't learn that much. So I figured out that I should go to the Rhode Island School of Design and do the summer program there. So I went to RISD and I did the summer program, and it was a really big kick in the butt, and they decided that I should come back and do more, and I told my mom I wanted to come back and do more, and she's like, well, this is good, but I was hugely dyslexic, and I still am hugely dyslexic. She's like, you should stay where you are, and I'll pay for you to go to graduate school wherever you want. So I figured out there was a way that I could go back to RISD as what was called a visiting student. So I went back there for my fall of my senior year. And then in London, I went to Central St. Martin's, which was really good because Central St. Martin's is much more product-oriented than any of the schools in America. You know, they have the big Wedgwood factories in Stoke-on-Trent that they make things for. So I always knew from a young age that I wanted to make something tactile. I wanted to be a product person, not an art person. But still, even though when I was doing this, I thought that I would have some main job that would support this, and that this would be something that I would do on the side, like people garden and people cook, that I would probably be a veterinarian or maybe a banker like my father, but being the dyslexic that I could have never handled the science behind being a vet or the math behind being a banker. So I ended up in the right place. My grandfather had his own business, and so that was something that I aspired to a lot. This is me in probably about 1996 at Mecox Gardens in the Hamptons. When I moved to Washington after I graduated from school, and I had the first show of my work at a store down there, and the show did really well, and I sold a lot of dishes that I was making at the time. I met Mac Hoke, who was just opening Mecox Gardens, the garden emporium, that there are now 8 different stores out there. And Mac said, why don't you come be Artisan resident? So I went out there and I worked in a prefab building out behind Mecox Gardens, and the clay and the glaze that I was using at the time totally didn't like each other. I would spend hours making these things, and I'd open up the kiln and the pieces would be broken or soonly break right afterwards. It was tough. I think sometimes if I'd gone to the beach every day, I might have had a better summer, but I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who needs to be going and keeping going. But I think that as an artist, and particularly in ceramics, it's a tough business to be in, and you've really got to have sometimes a setback or a failure to really assure you into saying, okay, this is really what I want to do. Because I went back to Washington, D.C. after that year, and I said to my boyfriend at the time, I think I need to go to business school, because this being poor stuff, it doesn't work for me. And he was like, keep at it. So these were the dishes that I made back then. So out of every bad situation, I have this point of view that I keep on today with. There is a silver lining, and there is something good that comes out of it. There's some more of the dishes. What came out of it that summer, the silver lining, happened in the form of Richard Keith Langham, a decorator who had worked for Jackie O for the last 10 years of her life, who was working on this house that happened to be Jackie O's grandparents' house. And he said, Chris, you're going to make these lamps, and they're going to be here in about 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, sure. You know, he drew me a little sketch, and I got going on them and made them. And back then, I sent Keith just the ceramic vase, and he had it wired up in New York. But he ordered them, and my boyfriend at the time, when I was like, well, how much am I going to charge for these things? I was like, I don't know, maybe like $75. My boyfriend was like, no, they're going to be like $500, and he's going to be happy to pay for it. And I was like, okay, I'll do this. I get it. So this is my very first studio in Washington, D.C., which it was sort of subterranean. You can see there, you could see the windows at the top. I used to see the UPS man and wave up to him, and he'd drop off stuff. And slowly, as the business grew, I would take over more and more space in that building, which I think made the other artists in the building like going, what is that kid doing down there? I worked there for a long time, and the thing that I like to show about that slide is I speak to a lot of young people out there, and they tell me, oh, I don't have this, and I'm in this new studio, and I'm just starting out, and I'm like, you got to just do it. You got to just go out there and do it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and slowly it gets better, because now I've been in business for 20 years and I have a really nice studio and a lot of nice people that work for me, but you don't get there overnight. You get there by showing up and doing the stuff and showing up. And there's two lamps there that I want to point out, the two there, because you'll see another pair of them coming up in the lecture. So I was making things, I was learning how to turn wooden bases, I was learning how to gild, I was finding the best electrical parts, but what I didn't have was a whole lot of clients. And so what I would do is I would take pictures of my work and I would send them to different designers whose work I admire, and I'd put together like 10 packages. And I tell young people this today, I'm like, put together the packages, send them out. Even if 2 people respond to you, you're gonna be fine. In that case, 2 people responded. Albert Hadley called up and he bought those red lamps over there on the side. Here's some other ones. These ones actually have the basis that I turned on them. One of the people who I sent a packet to was Thomas Pheasant, the Washington, D.C. decorator, who was like, yeah, I like what you're doing. And he came over to the studio and bought 3 pairs of lamps, and I was like, I'm gonna make it, thank God. This was Bob Bennett, the Clinton's lawyer's house, and he actually had me come over and install things. It was nice in those days going over and seeing where things were going to end up. And another job I did with Tom, the vases on the mantle I made and the 2 on the console. This is Barbara Berry, the Los Angeles designer. Barbara was just starting out her now vast licensing line with Baker Furniture and a lot of other companies when I was starting out, and she had one of her assistants call and she said, we love your lamps, they are really great. We're going to open in High Point, and it was like maybe 10 weeks away, 12 weeks away from this, and they said, can you make 36 lamps in this time? And I was like, yes, I can. That was like the biggest thing that I'd ever had. And there's a saying out there, bite off more than you can chew and chew like hell. And I'm a big believer in that. So I made myself a timeline of what I needed to get done, and I started working on the things. And it got right down to the end, and I realized that unless I got in my car and drove these down to Baker or overnighted them, which at that point in my career I frankly couldn't afford. So I got in the car, drove down to Baker, and delivered all these lamps to her thing. They were so impressed. This is the Baker showroom back then, that they became a client of mine, and I made things for them for a lot of years. So this is Albert Hadley, who was part of Parrish Hadley, the design firm in New York, who influenced and started out a lot of designers and a lot of craftspeople like myself. Albert had a knack of finding young talent wherever it existed and pushing it forward. He was a great mentor to have, and you definitely wanted him on your side. And there's not anybody in New York I know that can say anything bad about him. When he died, David Kleinberg wrote about him one of the most endearing things that said, for a man who didn't have any kids, he certainly raised an awful lot of us. This is him in his apartment that was always changing around and taking different forms. This is sort of at the end. He had a sofa on the side there. Domino did this ad. They were going to put it on a billboard. I don't think it ever made it on a billboard, but he loved that idea. This is a job that he did in Palm Beach with 4 of my lamps anchoring the room. So this is the very first piece of press that was written about me. Stephen Stolman, who was then a dressmaker, wrote it, called Aladdin and His Lamps. It was in Hamptons magazine. It was the second summer I went back to the Hamptons and was making some profitable things out there. This is Michael Morelli, who's a friend of mine, who's the head stylist at Polo Ralph Lauren. And those 2 vase lamps behind the sofa I made for him. Margaret Russell was then working at Elle Decor and saw them, and she's like, this is amazing. I want to do a page about you. This is from Departures magazine. This was in my studio that I first moved into in New York. I had outgrown that studio in Washington, D.C., and everything that I was making was pretty much either going out to Los Angeles or coming up here to New York. So I was like, I'm going to give New York a try. I wasn't one of the kids who was like, oh my God, I've got to live in New York. It just happened that my career path has taken me here, and I'm certainly glad that I did. This is my potter's wheel where I make things. I have this great view of the old post office. I like to look at like auction houses for shapes and inspiration. I'm fascinated by how people live, and so the whole auction process reveals that to me. And along the way, I get to find deals, I get to see shapes that interest me, I get to delve in a little bit deeper. So I'll work on the potter's wheel, like this piece that you're seeing here. I threw that over a period of 3 days where I would make like the bottom part, then the middle part, and then the top part, and then on the fourth day I go in and I do a lot of subtraction. And when I'm working, I make like 6 or 8 of them, and then I pick the form that I like the best, and we make a mold from that. This is me wedging. So this would be me making something. And then this is one of the molds that I was talking about. And after they come out of the molds, we put them back on a potter's wheel and take all the lines out of them and make them very, very much handmade. I had a hard time stopping throwing each one of them and moving over to this, but clients really want regularity. When you order something from them, they want it to be 22 inches, 15 inches, or whatever. When I was hand doing it, it was sometimes 17 inches, next time 18 inches. So this allows, and I tell a lot of young potters too who have this problem, because it's the craftsman sort of set back, hold back things sometimes. I'm like, let it go. You can really let your business grow a lot further. So when we glaze, we pour 2 or 3 coats of glaze on to get these really bright surfaces that we use in some of the pieces in the kiln there. We hand turn each of our bases to fit each lamp, and then they're numbered, and then they're finished. This is our water gilding process where we use 23 karat gold and white gold. And this is the hallway when you come to my studio. It's like a jewelry box. I like to think that we make jewelry for people's living room. There's a lot of color there, and it's really exciting and fun to be around all of it. This is a room that Albert Hadley did, and some of the first lamps that I made for him are on the back of that table with the cabriolet legs. And another job I did with Albert that Harry Heisman, who's here tonight, worked on. And then this is Harry on his own. For Christmas one year, he gave me a really, really great pepper grinder. And I used the pepper grinder as the influence visually to make the lamps on either side of the bed there. This is a cover of House Beautiful with Markham Roberts and one of my ridged spiral lamps on the back of it. I've been making that lamp for a lot of years, and recently it's become really, really popular. Markham has a great book out that spans his career, which is about as long as mine, and he's been buying things for me forever. And when the book came out, I go, I think I'm going to buy about 2,000 of these and have a different dust jacket made for it, and it can be my own book. So Marco goes, I like that. I like that. We'll just charge twice as much for it. And then this is a fairly recent cover of Veranda magazine with 2 of our Prussian tall vase lamps on. And then this is a picture that I took myself, which I think is fun because it's not as glitzy and blown out as the rest of them. This is my friend Meg Braff's little Florida getaway, and she doesn't have much color going on in this room, and that pink in those lamps is just super, super pale. This is Bill Hodgins up in Boston, who was part of Parrish Hadley as well, who jumped on my bandwagon at the very beginning of it. Mr. Hodgins works in all colors like stone, bone, white, gray, maybe a little light pink, maybe a little light blue. We do a lot of celadon lamps for him and a lot of beige lamps. It's very quiet, very serious work. But what I like to show this because I like to make things that will exist in any environment, that they're not about today and they're not about yesterday, they're about a continuum. This is Lindsay Coral Harper, who had worked for Richard Keith Langham, who was my main starter at the beginning, and that lamp there at the side of her is one of my very first ones, and I love it because it's like if you buy something from me, it's an investment, but you can live with it for a super, super long time. This is Ashley Whitaker, and pale pink lamp beside the bed, and then this was just recently in House Beautiful. These people are all who I consider like my family. This is Alex Papagrasides, who's hugely infectiously enthusiastic, and you want him to visit your studio because he's sort of like a locust, will devour and take away everything in his sight. The lamps that are in this black library now were first made for his bedroom. And when he moved, he put them into the library, had some different shades made for them. And then this is a lamp that we collaborated on. I think he found the shape in an auction catalog, and it had a lot of ormolu on it, and it had a lot of gold on it. And I was like, okay, we're going to take all that off, and we're going to have a very simple, elegant silhouette. And this is his bedroom. And the lamps on either side of the bed I made in collaboration with Charlotte Moss, who had a townhouse store, and those were made for the townhouse store. This is Sam Allen, my boyfriend, and you can see the burnt orange Aurora lamp on the side. I love color a lot. The more color for me, the absolute better, and I think Sam does a really good job of bringing that in this room. This is Bunny Williams, who she and her husband John have somehow taken Albert's place and pushed me forward in a lot of situations, whether it's gardening or making things. Little story about Bunny. When she was starting her own business, which is now called Bunny Williams Home, that sells products, after about 1.5 years, she was sitting me in her dining room. She's like, why is it not happening? It's just not going fast enough. And I'm like, you need to keep doing it. You need to just keep doing it. Keep showing up, keep making the things, and it'll happen. And that's the way it has happened with her. This is Mario Boada. The 2 lamps on the commode opposite the bed are mine. Okay, so this is me back at the White House in my intern days. When I was in Washington and I graduated from school, I was sort of floating around looking for a job. You know, that job that I talked about in the beginning, I was giving myself a really hard time about. Couldn't find anything, and my roommate at the time was friends with the White House intern director, and I think she realized that I was waffling around. She said, well, why don't you come be an intern at the White House? And I'm like, okay, I'm not doing anything. I'll go over there. That'll be a good job. It'll keep me busy. So I went over there and I worked for the Clintons in the social office. And the thing that was so great about that is they had made a really big effort to move crafts from the Renwick over into the house. So like on a side table, there would be like a Dale Chihuly sculpture or a Native American basket or something out there that had been made in America. It was a really nice thing. And I thought to myself all the way back then, it'd be really great to make something for this place. So when the Clintons were leaving the White House, they had purchased a lot of things for their house in Washington and for their house in Chappaqua. And the George Bushes had purchased some things for the upstairs of the White House. So I had this little White House connection that was going on that I didn't want to lose. So I sat down at my computer and I wrote Michael Smith a letter when he was named the White House decorator. And I said, I'd love to donate some lamps to the White House. And Michael called right away. He goes, I think that's a great idea. I'm doing an all-American room. It'd be great to have some things in there that you made. I never imagined that we would get such a great place as we did at the end of the room. So those are there, and there's a lot more in the upstairs of the White House. My friend Claire Potter says to me about it after seeing like the umpteenth shot of this on the New York Times, honey, I think you better retire because it's gotten as big as it's going to get. Which I don't think is the case. I don't know what my next big thing is, but with life, we don't know what's around tomorrow's corner, so I keep looking for it. We get a lot of comparisons of like, this is what you can get for this or that or the other. We're at the high end of the market. There's a lot of stuff at the low end of the market, and I sit at the table of plenty when people say, oh, people are knocking you off. I'm like, you know, I wasn't the first person to make lamps out there, but it's nice to see that there is a variety. So on to new things that we're making. We're making some marbleized tableware. It's based off of an old traditional mocha ware technique where you use a slip and you swirl it. I'm trying to do it in a more contemporary setting. We're using different colors with it, and I like the plate to be fairly spare in its coloration of it. This I just got my hands on today. I'm really excited about this. It's Julia Reed's new cookbook. Julia Reed is a great, great writer, and her new cookbook is fantastic. She used these brown and white plates on there. She sent me a picture of it. She goes, honey, which plate should I use? And I'm like, okay, you need the brown marble one, so they're going to look great there. This is a mirror that I'm currently working on for the Kip Space Show House. It's I went to the Anderson Ranch a couple of summers ago to try and sort of like reinvigorate myself, and I had the idea of making ceramic mirrors there, and I made a few of them, but sort of stopped making them because I wanted to get the plate business up and going and running. And now that the plate business is up and going and running, I have a little bit more time to experiment with some different things. So I made all the different little geranium leaves and put them together, and they're on a ceramic frame, and they'll get mounted on a wooden frame, and it'll all get luster gold, and it'll be in the Kips Bay show house before the end of the week is over. This is my showroom that we mentioned earlier. It's nice to have it because it keeps things very easily accessible. We're in Midtown Manhattan, which isn't hard to get to, and we welcome anyone coming down there, but the showroom's easy to pop in and out of. So this is my own apartment in New York. I like to show how I use lighting in there. There's a ceiling light, side table lamp, one of my own, of course. And that's how it looks during the day. I've lived in the same apartment forever. It's on the ground floor. It has a little garden in the back of it that I can walk my dogs in. It's the living room. There's a dining table over there that currently has 6 chicks on it because like I'm a secret, well not so secret farmer, and I incubate and have the chicks there for a week or two, and then they move up to my farm. I did go home in between here and there and see how many had hatched. And there it is at night. I'm a big believer in picture lights and in candlelight and in fire. And this is my little kitchen and how it looks at night. And this is my bedroom. Albert Hadley did the bed at night. So this is my farm in upstate New York. I bought this house when it was a wreck and a half. It was something that you would find in a Wyeth painting with like the curtains coming out of the windows and like holes in it. There were honeybees living in the walls of it. It was a wreck and a half. I think the owner probably saw me as a sucker coming along to buy it, but what I saw in it were these great bones and this great structure. And that's kind of what I wanted. I didn't want somebody else's kitchen. I didn't want somebody else's bathroom. I wanted a project, and I took the project on slowly and methodically and sort of redid the rooms as I could afford to and needed to. It took a lot of years to get it where it is now, but it's there. There it is for the front, and since this picture has been taken, we moved those trees away from the front of it. My landscape designer, P. Allen Smith, I said, why? Those are pretty trees. I like them there. He goes, it looks like some crazy cat woman lives in there. You have to move those trees away. And we've since moved the trees away, and you see more of the Greek revival to the house. It was the right thing. There are 2 little boxwoods, or 2 good-sized boxwoods in front of it. And how it looks at night. In my kitchen. The table in the kitchen is one of the stories that I like to talk about in the cycle of life. David Duncan, who's a friend of mine and a great antiques dealer, had this table that had come from Bunny Mellon's townhouse in New York, and I loved the table when I saw it, and I was like, this is great, but it's too small for my kitchen. I need a big, long table in there. My mom has a big, long table in her kitchen, and I think I was trying to emulate that, so I got the kitchen done. I got the big, long table in there. You had to walk all the way around the big, long table to get anywhere. This one like turns and telescopes and is made bigger. So like 2 years after I'd seen the table, I called David Duncan up. I'm like, have you still got the table? Still got the table. It's at my house in Connecticut. Drive over and get it. So I drove over and get it. You know, it just is a showing that like things will come to you at the right time. Here's another angle of it and how it is at night. Alan did the watercolor over the fireplace. It's a big blue Hubbard squash. In the dining room. The light fixture was a design by Albert Hadley that I got at an auction for like a song. The wallpaper came out of a friend of my mom's mother's house that Ellen Biddle Shipman had put in the 1930s, and when the new owners of the house moved in, they said, we don't want this fancy wallpaper, would you like it? My mom said yes, and it sat in her basement for some 15 or 20 years. I could hear my mom talking to dealers trying to find a home for it, and I wanted the conversation to be done. I did not aspire to have this fancy wallpaper in my dining room. But the wallpaper was sent to me, and I'm like, this is some really good stuff. I'm going to use it myself. Another happenstance. how it looks at night. You can see all those birds in there. It's incredible. This is, if you came to the front door of the house, this would be the room that you would enter in, but all houses where I'm located, you use the kitchen entrance to get in and out of. My TV room, library, and how it is at night. So that's our Michael lamp that I named after Michael Smith. We do our marbleized technique on. And here it is at night. So a lot of people go to church to pray. I go into my garden to pray. This is where you can find me on a Saturday and Sunday working like a field hand. I get so dirty out there that my lawn guy goes, "You would make a great hired man." It's great because I go out there and all the worries that I have during the week of running a business completely go away, and I plant dahlias and sweet peas and hydrangeas and go to town. You know, that house has lived up there for a couple of different centuries, and I think I take better care of it than it's been taken in a long time. But I try to put into that what I try to put into our products, which is that timelessness, that good quality. I think if you make something that's really good, it will sell itself. So, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? They're bringing out the microphone now. It's serious.
I just want to know where you got those dining room chairs.
The dining room chairs came from a dealer in Florida called Kevin Perry, who is a great dealer. He's now more in the Carolinas, and I was shopping with my mom one day, and I was like, those chairs are so beautiful, Mom. I didn't have a place for them at the time that I was clearly cognitively thinking. And I'm like, you got to buy them, and my mom will pretty much buy anything. And she bought them, and then I realized that I didn't have any chairs in my studio, and I'm like, those would be great chairs for my studio. Can I buy those chairs from me? Oh God, took a long time, but they eventually came to me, and I had those ones because they're more in there, reproduced and made. We have 3 down here in the city. We have 3 big oval ones and 1 sort of standard barrel one. And then we have 3 up in the country. Up in the country is where we're making the tableware and stuff up there. So there are 6 altogether that fire up every single day and go to 2,000 degrees. My main studio is on 35th Street here between 7th and 8th Avenue. We use earthenware, which is the lower fire stuff, which gives you a better range of more accurate color. I did, but you know, most of this stuff I've learned on my own. You know, you can learn a lot in school, and I'm not an anti-school person, but most of what I do, I've learned from, as I say, just doing it, you know, experimenting, you know, biting. Somebody will call me and say, can you make this color? And if I'm fairly certain I can make it, I'll say I can make it. Because I'm sort of like a ceramic prostitute, you know, if it can be done, and there's some money involved, I'm going to do it, you know.
I don't want to say what's a typical day, because you'll probably say I don't have a typical day, but what's a day in the life of you?
You know, I get there to the studio and I go around and I see what everybody's up to and what the stage of different projects are going, because I now do new product development and make the new things like that mirror that we were talking about. But once I get that mirror in a place where I'm okay with how we're making it, I'll hand that project off to somebody else who will then do that. So I'll follow up with them and make sure that they're on target with where they need to be. But I'm sort of like the lightning around our office. I'm the person who sort of like keeps everything going and moving, and like the glue of it. Everybody who works for me is incredibly talented and very, very good. But I think that I'm sort of like the little like, okay, let's keep it all going, you know. So I do that, I go to lunch, and then I come back. Like, it's awful because they're making stuff. I can have lunch now, which sometimes is going out, sometimes it's having it at my desk. And then I sit down and I make something. But I have to say that my favorite time is 5 o'clock when everybody has gone home and I have like an hour or two to myself. Recently, I stayed on a Friday night when I needed to get that mirror done, and I had like 4 hours where I was just working on my own. That was my favorite. You know, as my business has grown, I've needed to have more people come in and help me, which I love, and they're all great, but the solitude to what drives you to be a potter, I think in the beginning, is kind of a little bit lost by that. And the phone and the people calling, where's my thing? So.
No. Have you always signed your lamps, and do you currently sign
That's
lamps?
a good question. I meant to talk about that earlier. I signed my lamps always from the beginning, and I stopped signing them for a period. I honestly got too busy to sign them all, and one of my wiring guys was signing them for a while. And we were cutting a little hole in the bottom of the felt, and we were putting my name in there, and it just got so, like, to be kind of unmanageable for the moment. And then a pair of lamps that Pat and Bill Buckley had, and then when they died, they appeared at one of the Christie sales, and it was identified on the page a Christopher Spitzmiller lamp. And I'm like, you've got to sign everything. And I tell all artisans out there, I'm like, you need to put your name on stuff, you know, it's got to be on there in some ways. So now what we do is we sign a sticker, and I sign a sticker, and the sticker goes on the bottom of the lamp, so it's identifiable as a product that we made, because I'm trying to make something that's going to be around for generations. You know, I really want to make something that's going to outlast me. Yeah, it's a paperback sticker, and it goes on the felt on the bottom of the lamp, so it sounds pretty innocuous, but it's down there. And, you know, the people aren't going to take it off because it's on the bottom of the lamp. You know what I mean? It's like, how many times do you pick it up? You know, it's probably going to go on a console table, maybe if the lamp is sold, but it goes into another home, it's on the table. So there's no place visible on the lamp that I really see. And with the ceramic part, we're always juggling which is the best glaze side on it. So I don't want to have my mark like on the front of it. I want it to be discreet.
I was going to say an embosser, but that would be hidden by the felt on the bottom of the lamp, so it's not a very good question.
We now on our shades too, on our spiders on the top of the shades, they now say Spitzmiller on them too. So we're, yeah. Yeah, we select the shades and we send them out with a vellum paper shade, and about 85% of the time that I see things photographed in magazines, they're using the shades that we use. There's some of the time people have their own shades made for it. And we offer some different shades as well too. We have some that are trimmed with brown in the bottom of them, and some blue ones and some red ones now. Yeah.
Christopher, how many hours does it take to make a lamp? And I swear I've never asked this question, but what music do you? Do you work to music? I've never asked an artist.
The first thing, I listen to NPR incessantly because I stopped reading the newspaper, I'm embarrassed to say, so I get all of my news from NPR. And I like that because it's like quiet and I can like zone out and be aware of what's going on in the world at the same time. What was the first? How long does it take? When I'm making one, it takes like a good week, and then it needs to dry, and that's another week, and then it goes into the kiln and it gets glazed, and that's a couple of days. And then a base is made and turned in gelt. So like best case scenario, it's like 3 weeks, a month. When you order something from us, it's 6 to 8 weeks is the regular delivery time. You know, we make about 35 things every single week. Okay, she's warming up.
Where do you get your greatest inspiration from? You said you went someplace for the...
Auction houses are my greatest. Auction houses and books. Those are the two places. Like those two bookcases on either side of the fireplace are just jammed. Well, one side of it is like cooking, and then the other top part is like all ceramic, and then the bottom part is like interior, and it's bad because there's no more space for any books. So I read on Social Diary that Dwayne Hampton hides her books behind her curtains. And I'm like, I've thought of a lot of places to hide books, but behind my curtains is not one of the places that I've thought to hide them. Travel does play into it, but honestly, I'm most concentrated when I'm like in the mode of seeing something. And, you know, my iPhone has been great because, like, on Instagram, I can see something that'll influence me. And you can't blow it up on there, but I can take a screenshot and then enlarge that and look at that and then use that image to create something else from it, you know, because all design out there is influenced from something else. I think it's our obligation as an artist to put your own mark on it and to not regurgitate what you've already seen. So that's what I try and do.
What's your view about Instagram?
I love it. I'm completely addicted to it. I'm on there entirely way too much.
I have an Insta fashion. This is how we met on Instagram.
No, it's great. There are young potters out there that I can follow that in the past I was disconnected with, and I can see what they're doing. There's people I aspire to. There's all kinds of visual stimulation on there. You know, I think that it's then, okay, putting it down and then doing something. I have this quote from Albert about talking about how many ideas that there are out there, and it's really not how many ideas that there are, but it's how many things that you actually get done. So it's like you can look at all this stuff, but at the end of the day, where are you going to take it and then bring it to something else? So if you're looking at somebody's garden and you're influenced by their garden, like what are you going to do on your own that will influence your own garden and grow from there? There's some people over here.
Hi, I have a question. On your plates...
But this is the famous Bill Sullivan who made the mirror in my front hall. I love his work.
Those plates of yours are just fantastic. They're really beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm very curious about it. My first start was in ceramics, and that's where I fell in love with crafts. I made a mold of something and popped it out and was like, oh my God. But the coloring on that, is that done with the slip, or is that done with a
It's done with the slip. We put one coat of white all over it, and we let it dry to a point where it's dry enough, and then we splatter the color on, and then we move the color till it's got the right amount of movement into it, and then we let it dry, and then we put a coat of clear all over the top of it.
Wow.
So it's sort of like a work in process all the way along that involves a lot of hand motion. The nice thing about it is that no two of them are ever alike.
Right.
Yes, the shapes are all the same and they all stack up and be a nice even stack, but they're all, each one of them is different.
Is that a technique that's been done before?
Yeah, you know, this was done in the 1800s, like the mocha ware stuff that you see with the swirl stuff, you know.
Right.
This is inspired from me going to the Ceramics and Glass show in January and seeing the old stuff there. Both the agate ware stuff that they made back then, which is where it's colored inside of the clay, which I do sometimes, and then the surface decoration part of it as well, too.
Yeah, wish you success with it, because it really looks fantastic.
It's been success. You know, with that, it's making it is our big problem. It's like getting enough of it done. We make those things way in upstate New York, and I imported 2 potters to come in and make it who had great ceramics degrees, and they quit after a year, and they're like, it's not the job, it's just so isolated up here. But so now I hired 2 people who are local, who are super hard workers, who don't have the best skill set, but now after 6 months of them working at it, they've got the skill set they need. And I'm going to do the window at Mecox Gardens tomorrow morning and put all the plates in there and give them a little bit bigger of a showing.
Great.
So.
Don't mean to hog this. I just on your when you throw a pot and you said it takes 3 or 4 days, that's to make a style of, you know, the prototype basically, correct?
The prototype and getting the height, because, you know, clay doesn't want to get, like, a lot of times I'm working in things that are like 20 to 24 inches.
Right.
It's really hard to throw 20 or 24 inches and get that thing to stand. I can go like 12, 15 inches, and then I have to add on from there. Sometimes I'll make 2 different pieces and join them together. In the case of like the double gourd, that's 2 different pieces that I've made joined together. I'll use any method that I can, but a big seam line is put in from where that's joined, and that's why you've got to let it rest and go in there and use your subtraction tools and trim out and make something else from it.
While it's on the wheel, or you do that by hand?
I keep it on the bat. So like the bat is the thing that attaches to the wheel head, and so the bat keeps the pot completely centered, and so I can be working on all of the different 8 of them that I'm talking about at the same time and moving them around without having to recenter it and get it all back on there.
Great. And one more question. After you take a piece out of the mold and you put it back on the wheel, I would imagine that would be really hard to just center it. you know, to get a, and then what do you do? Put slip on top of that, or?
Not so much put on slip. We trim in some lines. If it's lost a lot of its throwing lines, we'll do that.
Yeah.
It just brings a little crisp feel to the pot that it wouldn't otherwise be there if we didn't do that.
Yeah.
It's a little secret that I picked up from Roy Hamilton, who is another one of the people I look up to a lot.
Well, it was great to see so many, because I've seen your lamps before, but to see so many over a period of time and so many different styles and the classical lines that you have, they're just, and the glazes, as we both know, there's patinas and glazes. Anyway, thank you.
Carrie knows the answer to this.
6 glaze colors right now. We have a Delft. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, this is in the slip where she's talking about. But how many of the main glazes? It's
The main glazes, we have over 60 glazes. Yes.
Yeah, there's 60 that you can pull from regularly, and then we do custom colors as well too. So there are a few colors that we just can't do, and now I know the ones that we just can't do, and I'm like, we can't do that really super bright fuchsia pink, and there are a few other ones, but I'm like, anything else, we'll make it and send out 3 to 4 different options that you can pick. We just ask that you send in a Benjamin Moore color piece and then like a piece of the fabric. We want more than one reference of the color just because it's read so differently in the lights. Oh. It has to do with the chemicals and the lead and what's available and what's safe to work with. That's why we can't use the fuchsia pink, sadly.
Are you able to protect your designs by copywriting them?
I don't have any of that. And mostly people have been pretty good with it. There have been a few cases that they've not been pretty good with it. And I used to turn my head away from it and be like, that'll go away. And now when I see it, I pick up the phone and I'm like, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this for me, and you shouldn't do this for yourself, you know. There is some, but it's a very hard battle to go on, and I'm the kind of person that just believes in choosing your battles and choosing what you want to. I'd rather spend my time coming up with a new shape and a new thing, you know, than battling over some territorial thing, because if the piece is 2 inches smaller, there's so many things that they can say it is different because of this. I saw something recently that somebody bigger did, and I picked up the phone and I called them, and they were completely respectful about it. They were like, I get it, I totally see it. Do you want us to put these on our sale thing? Do you want us to get rid of them altogether? And I'm like, I just want you to be aware of this, because I mean, they showed me the reference piece that they supposedly referenced it off of, and I'm like, come on, that's so, you know, like I sent them a picture of my thing, and I'm like, this is my thing, this is, and you know, I didn't invent it, but when you can see so clearly, like, this is this and that's that. Like, as I said before, we owe it to each other to just be respectful and to do the artistically right thing.
So when you see something at an auction, how do you change it so it's your design?
Make it a little taller, make it a little fatter. Like, there's elegance factors that go into it that I manipulate it and move it. Just in the act of sitting down and physically making something, I don't think any of us could really, unless you're a machine or a person who's completely skilled in that, reproduce exactly what you're talking about. So a lot of it is just in the process, by the art of just going into it. And then I sort of like look at it and I'm like, this one is the best. Let's go with that. So.
I wanted to, first of all, compliment you on your Prussian blue on lamps with ridges. That's about the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And secondly, I wanted to thank you for all of your words of wise experience. That's very inspiring.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to just stick with it, with whatever you're doing. I think that's the hardest thing that I think most people give up. Most people don't knock on the right doors. You know, if you get a no, that doesn't mean you're a bad artist or you're making the bad thing. It means that maybe you're not connecting with the client that you need to be connecting with. I luckily fell into the pocket of dealing with decorators who could, like, okay, let's make this thing. Okay, let's do that thing, you know, and there was a niche out there of whole lamps that like nobody was doing anything in. A woman who worked at Southern Accents asked me one time when I was speaking at something like this, she goes, what did we do before you? And I'm like, people bought things at auction and they had them wired and there was a whole thing. Because lamps used to be like super ornate and like dripping with like this or that or the other. What I do is simple. It's not fancy. I think the simpler, the better in a lot of ways. She's hot now. Oh, yeah, I didn't say where it is. The farm is in Millbrook, New York. It's an hour and a half north of the city. I'm 7 miles below Millbrook town. It's like the middle of nowhere. Like I'm 7 miles to any store. Friends come to visit and they're like, Millbrook is great, but like, where is the milk in the store? And I'm like, in New York, the store is at the end of the street. Up here, I need the store to be far away. I like it up there because there are a number of my peers up there that I can connect with and do things with. No, I would say more people in the trades. You know, Bunny and John are up there. Markham is up there. Ashley Whitaker, whose slides I showed, is up there. But the garden, I put on the Garden Conservancy open days, and this year I think it's going to be open on September 23rd. So if you want to come up and see the garden, then you can see it. And it's a really good time to see the garden because I grow a lot of dahlias. So at the end of the summer, it's like a fireworks in there. The fence came from the movie 12 Years a Slave. It was one of the few good things that came out of that movie. It was, watching it was like, oh, but I was like, saw this plantation, and I had shown a fence that I wanted to use to my garden guy, and he's like, you can come up with better than that. So I saw this, I stopped the movie. It was right before the Oscars. I was trying to squeeze in as many nominations as I could before the Oscars, and I did a screenshot of it, and strangely enough, my stepmother knows the woman who owns the plantation in New Orleans that it came from, and that has been a, it's an old Greek revival thing that the band in the fence represents the wheat crop and the pieces that come out. I mean, it's so modern in its design, but it's so based in tradition, which is completely me, you know, like, it's perfect. And it's all made out of like a synthetic wood called ASAC, and the great thing about this synthetic wood is you can paint it, but it doesn't rot like regular wood does. And it feels like regular wood. How about way in the back there?
What's your using automated design techniques like technology, 3D printing? How do you think that affects your...
You know, I'm so bad. I don't hardly use any of that stuff. I made some plates for the most recent Lenox Hill Neighborhood House Gala, and we photographed dahlias that I had grown in my own garden, and we had them made into ceramic decals, and we use that. We will sometimes have some things scaled for us that way, but I'm more akin to hiring somebody who can make something with their own hands and producing it that way. I should probably be more technologically into it than I am. I need to figure things out on my own. I'm difficult in that way and prefer to do it more the old-fashioned way than anything else. Thank you.
So Christopher, on behalf of the General Society, I want to thank you so much for being part of our Artisan lecture series. It was absolutely a terrific lecture. You embodied everything that we want the Artisan lecture series to represent. First of all, your vision, your talent, your persistence, and your pursuit of quality. It's been you've been just such a terrific contribution to our Artisan lecture series. So thank you so much for speaking here this evening.
Thank you.
And we would like to make a presentation.
Christopher, on the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York, founded 1785, expresses its gratitude to Christopher Spitzmiller, owner and founder, Christopher Spitzmiller Incorporated, designer, potter, and lamp maker, for his participation in the General Society Artisan Lecture Series. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And because, as many of you who have been here before know, that we never let our artisans or lecturers go, we have made you a lifetime member of the General Society Library.
Thank you so much.
And finally, from Meg Stanton, our program assistant,
a little memento of the evening. And one last thing, a General Society bag.
Actually, one more thing. Polly Guerin, author of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, the City of New York. The author is here with us tonight, and she has bring you a signed copy of
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I will. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.